For spine-chilling true stories, unexplainable terrors revealed from haunted locations, Lisa used to sit on her front porch, watching her kids play in the fading light of summer evenings, their laughter ringing like silver bells. Life wasn't easy, but it felt safe in their sleepy little Ohio neighborhood. Until now. It started with whispers. Low, sinister murmurs that crept through the cracks of her windows at night, freezing Lisa's blood like frost in the air. The familiar sense of belonging was slowly twisting into something unfathomable and sickening. Late one stormy night, the wind howled and sent a panic rushing through her. With a vicious crack, their backyard greenhouse shattered, leaving jagged glass like teeth against the wet earth. Her heart raced, hammering against her ribcage with every gust. This was more than a bad storm. Something darker was stirring, creeping closer on the edge of her neighborhood, making shadows dance in the corners of her home. A few days later, small things went missing: Danny's baseball glove, Grace's favorite book. Each disappearance chipped away at her peace of mind, like whispers in the dark that twisted and turned like an angry serpent. And then, one night, a shape passed her living room window. Just a fleeting shadow, yet her stomach knotted with terror. What was out there? The neighborhood kids seemed drawn to the old Maplewood Hospital, a crumbling mass of brick and glass that loomed like a specter in the fading daylight. Their giggles echoed in a strange harmony with the terror in her gut. One afternoon, curiosity gnawed at her insides, and she approached a group loitering on the corner. They shared ghost stories, their eyes wide with excitement as they spoke of voices in the hospital that called to them, led by Mr. Hargrove, the town historian. Lisa's instincts screamed at her. She found solace in Mark, her gruff neighbor and former cop. "It's just a building," he muttered skeptically, but even he couldn't hide that lingering worry in his voice. They ventured into the hospital, flashlight beams trembling as they swept through the eerie halls. Each step echoed. The air felt thick. Shadows lurked, and whispers danced just outside her hearing, tugging at the edges of her sanity. In that decaying shell, Lisa stumbled upon the disgraceful truth stories of unethical experimentation and hidden pain buried deep in the town's history. Her heart thudded in her chest as she realized the shadow from her window wasn't just a figment, it was the embodiment of something sinister, something the community had hidden for too long. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Lights flickered as they navigated the haunted halls, the echoes of laughter twisting into anguished cries that clawed at the walls. Lisa's breath quickened. With every step, the shadows danced closer, and she could almost feel them wrapping around her, cold and suffocating. They weren't just stories. They were warnings. The feeling of unease settled deeper as whispers clamored louder. "They won't believe you, they can't save you." Lisa's pulse raced. Behind familiar faces lay hidden betrayals, and every smile felt like a ruse. The darkness around her tightened, and she knew. She had to confront this horror. But the malevolent spirit of Maplewood wanted more than just fear. It craved her family. Would she unearth the truth in time to save her children, or would they fall victim to the darkness hiding in plain sight? Lisa felt the weight of the air pressing down on her as they wandered deeper into the bowels of the Maplewood Hospital. Each flicker of the dying light sent shivers down her spine, the chaotic whispers more insistent, curling around her like a serpent ready to strike. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out the cries of long-forgotten patients trapped in time. Heavy dread mixed with ignited determination. She had to uncover what was really festering beneath this hollowed facade. Mark walked beside her, his brow furrowed. "Maybe we should think about leaving," he muttered, a tremor underlying his voice. "There's something off here." But there was no way Lisa would turn back now. The urge to protect her kids surged within her, boiling through the hellish atmosphere. They paused, the silence absorbing their breaths, and that when a distinct sound shattered the stillness. A soft, rhythmic tapping echoed from a corridor to their right. It was almost too gentle for the sinister environment. Lisa's throat went dry as she exchanged a glance with Mark. His lips pursed, but his body was taut like a coiled spring, ready to flee. The tapping continued. It wasn't random, it felt deliberate. A chilling realization washed over her. What if it was a cry for help? "We have to check it out," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark hesitated, but the decision had already been made. They tiptoed toward the sound, hearts racing, the atmosphere heavy with caution. As they neared the open door, a sudden gust of cold air swept through the hallway, causing the hairs on the back of Lisa's neck to stand on end. The door creaked open to reveal a dark room cluttered with rotten furniture and faded memories. The tapping stopped. "Hello?" Lisa called, her voice trembling. Silence met her, thick and oppressive. She strained her ears, listening for any sign, any sound that could lead her deeper into this nightmare. Just then, a distinct shuffling noise emerged from the far end of the room. They turned toward it, the shadows flickering ominously as her chest tightened with fear. "Get behind me," Mark ordered, stepping protectively in front of her. She stood frozen, eyes glued to the figure starting to emerge from the shadows. It was hunched, gaunt, and seemingly stitched together from fragments of darkness itself. "What do you want?" Mark's voice was steady, but Lisa could hear the tremor. The creature paused, tilted its head like a curious animal, revealing hollow eyes that gleamed with a dreadful hunger. Let's get out of here," Mark stammered, but Lisa couldn't move. It leaned closer, whispering incoherent syllables that chilled her bones. Then, amidst the madness, Lisa heard something clear, a name whispered like a prayer. "Danny!" A jolt shot through her. "No, go back!" she shouted, pushing past Mark. She rushed toward the shadow, desperation clawing at her throat. "What do you know about my son?" Suddenly, the lights flickered intensively, casting grotesque shadows all around. The grotesque figure shrieked, a high-pitched wail that echoed through the halls, shattering the very foundations of the hospital. Lisa stumbled back, suffocated by fear as the reality of a terrible truth struck her. This wasn't a ghost, it was something far more sinister, a harbinger. "Lisa! We have to leave, now!" Mark yelled, grabbing her arm, but it felt like trying to pull a boulder from the ground, and then there was a crash. A window shattered, the sound piercing through the cacophony. Outside, a vast shadow moved in the moonlight. It was circling closer, creeping toward her home like a harbinger of doom. "Danny!" Lisa screamed, the realization washing over her like ice water. Time was running out. Mark's grip tightened around her wrist as if anchoring both of them to reality. But in that moment, the darkness took a step forward, and Lisa felt dread wrapped around her heart like a noose, tightening slowly. What if they weren't the ones meant to leave this place alive? She couldn't shake the feeling that a much deeper horror awaited them. Though a way out seemed reachable, the real battle might just be beginning. The creature paused, its sickly fingers outstretched toward Lisa, wreathed in the musty stench of decay. It took a slow, deliberate step closer, every movement dripping with malice, every moment feeling like an eternity. Mark yanked her backward, the grip of fear surrounding them both like a vice. "Stand back!" he shouted again, his voice cracking under the weight of terror. The figure hissed, a sound that twisted and crawled into her mind. A deep, piercing chill licked at the edges of her sanity. Panic flickered like the dying lights, it felt alive, a pulse against their fraying nerves. "Danny!" It was a word like a knife, carving through the chaos. The creature recoiled slightly, an unsettling glimmer igniting in its hollow eyes. Lisa's heart surged with a manic hope, a desperate thread weaving her resolve. The shadows enveloped it, making it dance eerily, tantalizingly close yet so far. Then, as if a dam broke, a cacophony of screams burst forth from the shadows, a chorus of sorrow echoing through the hospital halls. "Help us!" they cried, voices intertwining in an anguished symphony. The walls seemed to ripple with the echoes, as though the entire structure was alive, feeding off their fear. "Lisa, please." Mark's voice pierced through the noise, his own fear morphing into urgency. "We need to go, now." The shadows were closing in, her pulse raced as the weight of the moment threatened to crush her. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, yet the name on her lips felt like a spell, anchoring her to the creature. "What do you know?" she yelled, forcing herself forward despite Mark's frantic pull. "Where is he?" The question clawed its way through clenched teeth. The ghastly figure lurched closer, the air electrified with the dread of unspoken words. In a fleeting moment, its face twisted grotesquely, white teeth flashing. "He waits," it hissed, breath foul and steeped in shadows. "Back where it began." A sudden crash echoed from further within the hospital, reverberating like thunder, shaking their resolve. Without thinking, Lisa withdrew a step then another, her instincts pushing her into retreat. Mark practically shoved her behind him, pushing them back toward the door, the monster looming in their peripheral vision. They turned, sprinting for the exit while the weight of the air seemed to press against them, a wall of darkness clawing at their heels. The echoes of the tortured voices faded into a chilling silence, only to be replaced by the sound of their own ragged breaths. "Where did it say?" Mark gasped, glancing back, eyes wide with fear. What did it mean? All at once, the entire building felt like it was shifting, creaking, as if it were alive and taunting them. Lisa's mind raced back where it began. Danny, the name hushed through her, a chorus of memories wrapped in warmth. It formed a path, flickering like the dim lights around them. Suddenly, a sharp integrity cut through the fog of dread. They needed a plan, a place to go, a fight for the truth of what happened, not just for Danny, but for the others trapped here. "We need to find the old records room," she said, her voice more resolute than before. "It has to be there." Mark nodded, understanding etched on his face. They stumbled back into the wretched depths of the hospital, propelled by fear and desperation. But as they plunged back into the suffocating darkness, the shadows began to twist, congealing around them, ever watchful. Something was still lurking, something with more sinister intentions. In the distance, a soft, rhythmic tapping resumed, accompanied by a low, echoing laugh that chilled Lisa to her core. It was as though something was mocking them, heralding their return to peril. Would they uncover the truth in time, or would the secrets remain hidden, lost forever in the abyss? A new horror awaited them, one that would test their limits, push their sanity, and force them to face the nightmares they thought they could escape. The hallways yawned before them, stretching endlessly into the abyss. Shadows coiled around the walls, smoking like billowing fog. Lisa felt her heart thundering, a drumbeat that matched the faint tapping echoing through the corridor. Each knock felt alive, daring them to pursue the horrors ahead. "Mark," she whispered, the sound barely making it past her trembling lips. His face twisted in fear as he turned to her, eyes wide, glistening in the dim light. There was a question unspoken between them, whether to forge ahead or turn back. "Let us move," he urged, the strength in his voice wavering. Together, they pressed on, propelled by adrenaline and the desperate need to uncover Danny's fate. The records room wasn't far, just past the nurse's station. A heavy door stood closed, peeling paint making it seem like a mouth ready to swallow them whole. The familiarity of the place settled a dusting of courage inside Lisa. She lifted her hand and pushed the door open. It creaked slowly, revealing a vast room cluttered with files and dispirited memories, old reports and crumbling paperwork, relics of a forgotten past. A damp smell hit them, thick and sour. Dust motes danced in the pale light filtering through grimy windows. "Here," Lisa breathed, a rush of hope flooding her as she stepped inside, scanning the chaos for anything that could help. "We just need to find one file." Mark's shoulders slumped. He glanced at her, a grimace etched on his face. "What if we don't?" Then we'll keep looking, she said, determination knitting her brows together. She moved to the nearest stack, flipping through yellowed papers while Mark pulled away to search another corner. As Lisa dug deeper, an uneasy sensation curled in her stomach, a shadow of an inkling that they weren't alone. An icy draft whimpered through the room, carrying with it faint whispers that seemed to scratch at her consciousness. She paused, heart racing, head snapping around. "Did you hear that?" She called out, but Mark's response was lost in the click and scrape of the records. Then it came again, a soft chorus of voices, pleading yet distant. The horror of the past sank its claws into her psyche. Each name echoed like a warning, but Danny's voice tugged hardest at her heart. "Danny," she murmured. The name drifted on her lips like a breath stolen from another world. A sudden crash made them both start. Lisa turned just in time to see a stack of files tumble to the floor. The sound echoed like thunder, reverberating off the walls. Mark jumped and cursed under his breath, his eyes flared with panic. "Maybe it's just the wind," he suggested weakly, the uncertainty shaking his voice. But Lisa knew better. The whispers grew louder, insisting, urgently rising like water in a flooding basement. Her fingers brushed against a particular folder. The name on the front, Daniel Marks. "Mark!" she shouted, clutching the file tight, heart racing. It was a glimmer of hope, but hope is often flanked by something darker. Just as Mark rushed to her side, a groan emerged from the shadows enveloping the far corner of the room, rippling dread through the air. "What the hell was that?" His voice cracked, eyes darting back in fear. The shadows stirred. Something unnatural took shape, a black mass spiraling forward, a gnarl of limbs and jagged edges like it had slithered straight from hell. It was bigger than anything they'd encountered, and it moved with a purpose, straight toward them. "Run!" Lisa screamed as her blood turned to ice. They didn't have time to talk. Panic gripped them in a chokehold. They bolted toward the door, every instinct screaming that whatever lurked behind them was more than just a figment of their imagination, but the door slammed shut in front of them with a deafening bang, locking them within the confines of the past where horrors awaited, alive and hungry. Lisa's breath quickened. "What do we do?" As the shadows thickened, laughter ricocheted off the walls, mingling with the whispers. They were trapped, and time was running out. In the thickness of fear, one question loomed: what ancient secret would they have to unearth to escape this hell? The air thickened as the laughter mingled with the whispers, drowning out Lisa's breath. Her hands trembled, clutching the folder as they turned toward the mass of shadows creeping closer, the very essence of dread. Mark's eyes darted around the room, searching for an exit, while he whispered frantic prayers under his breath. "Think, Lisa," he gasped, forcing himself to sound calm. "We have to find a way out." But the darkness pulsated, alive and relentless. The whispers sharpened into shrill cries, drowning out their thoughts. It felt like they were being pulled into the shadows, each heartbeat resonating with an ominous hum that echoed the terror seeping in around them. "Look!" Lisa shouted, pointing to the far wall. A faint outline, nearly obscured by shadows, marked a narrow window. "We can get through there." They raced toward it, dodging the fluctuating mass that writhed behind them, skittering closer with each step. As they drew near, the jagged edges of the window loomed ominously. Broken glass crisscrossed like grotesque teeth, glittering with a sinister invitation. "Is it safe?" Mark's voice trembled, but there was no time to question it. Lisa reached for the ledge, her heart pounding in rhythm with the faint drumming from the shadows. "We don't have a choice." Stepping closer, glass crunched beneath their weight. The figure faltered for a moment, as if contemplating them. Its laughter morphed into a guttural growl that vibrated through the air, shaking the very foundations of the room. It didn't matter what it was, they couldn't look back. With one last surge of adrenaline, Mark shoved his hands through the jagged opening and pulled himself up. "Lisa, hurry." He reached back for her, but she hesitated as the darkness slithered around her feet. "Come on." he screamed, desperation thick in his voice. The shadow lunged, snapping toward her like a beast. She felt its cold breath edging against her skin, causing her instincts to surge. Fear propelled her. She leapt, barely catching the edge of the window, and clawed her way through as splinters of glass bit into her palms. The moment they tumbled free, the darkness inside wailed a sound that would haunt their dreams forever. They landed on a surface outside, panting, gasping for breath. "This way." Mark pointed toward a nearby set of stairs leading down into a poorly lit alley. A flicker of light beckoned, a false promise of safety, but they could already hear it echoing, laughter thumping within the walls. Sprinting down the stairs, they reached an old door, locked tight. Lisa frantically rattled the handle, panic coursing through her veins like ice. Mark pressed against her, large hands grappling with the lock. It felt like time stretched, every beat of her heart sinking with the sinister whispers that threatened to pull them back. Then the door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit hallway. The sense of relief was fleeting. As they stepped inside, flickering bulbs cast twisted shadows that danced in the corners of their vision. "Where are we?" Lisa's voice resonated low, a whisper of dread. The hallway was lined with portraits, each depicting faces twisted in anguish. The air grew thick, suffocating, as if the walls themselves were breathing in their fear. Mark's hand brushed against one of the frames, and he froze. "Do you see this one?" She turned to follow his gaze. The figure in the portrait mirrored Danny's features, a haunting smile that was more macabre than comforting. Beneath the nameplate, a chilling year was etched in the wood, 1999. Fear clawed at her throat. "What does that mean?" And then, a voice cut through the silence. "Help us!" it echoed around them, a chorus of despair weaving through the air. The shadows pressed closer, their laughter echoing, no longer taunting but inviting. This door led somewhere darker, somewhere more twisted. Mark's grip on her tightened. "We have to move now." But they had come to a new uncertain realm, tethered to an ancient agony that beckoned them to discover its secrets. What waited around the next corner, just out of sight? The feeling gnawed at them as they stepped deeper into the abyss, the laughter following, relentless and hungry. The corridor yawned before them, stretching into an unending darkness that felt alive. Flickering lights swayed like candle flames, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out, clawing at their heels. Each step felt heavier, as if the very floor was pulling them down into the ground below. "Keep moving," Mark urged, his voice barely rising above the oppressive silence. The weight of unseen eyes pressed against their backs, and for a moment, they halted, caught in a moment of terror. Shadows danced across the walls, whispering secrets with every flicker, promises of doom that tightened around their throats. As they pushed forward, Lisa's heart raced. Anxiety gnawed at her thoughts, a relentless mantra of fear. Was this place real? Were those figures just figments of their imagination? They turned another corner, and suddenly the hallway twisted, narrowing into an impossibly tight space. "Mark," she breathed, panic clawing at her. "This isn't right." He nodded, his jaw tight. "We need to find another way out." But there was no way out. The hallway they had entered had morphed into something labyrinthine, folding back on itself. At the far end, they saw a heavy door, the only solid object in a nightmarish landscape. Faint light seeped beneath it, a faint glimmer of hope. But the echoes of laughter morphed into an eerie chorus, a sound woven from despair and madness. Lisa hesitated, the creeping dread winding its way around her. "What if it leads us deeper? What choice do we have?" He shot back, urgency lacing his words as they both forced their legs to move. Each footfall felt like a slow march to oblivion. As they approached the door, the temperature plummeted. Their breath formed clouds, visible manifestations of their shared terror. Mark grabbed the rusty handle and yanked the door open. It groaned, a tortured sound that resonated in the stillness. Beyond lay a room filled with antique toys and dolls stacked haphazardly against the walls. The dim light barely illuminated the disarray, casting eerie shadows of smiling faces that twisted in the flickering glow. A rocking horse creaked back and forth, though there was no breeze to keep it in motion. "Are those?" Lisa whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yeah, I see them." "Just don't touch anything," Mark warned, stepping carefully inside as if stepping on eggshells. A sudden clatter made them both jump. A doll toppled from a shelf, landing eerily upright, its grim eyes staring straight into Lisa's soul. She felt a chill run down her spine, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. "What do you think happened here?" Her voice trembled as they moved deeper into the bizarre collection of bygone eras. "I don't know, but I think we're not alone." "We shouldn't be here," Mark replied, panic rising in his throat. "Help us," came the voice again, clearer this time. It resonated from the darkness in the corner of the room, wrapped in the sinister cheer of a child's game long forgotten. "Mark!" Lisa gasped, backing away. Terrifying shadows began to slide along the walls, beginning to merge, solidifying into figures. Familiar, yet grotesque children with skin stretched tight over their bones, mouths open in silent screams, begging for release, heat pressed in around them as the laughter intensified, a sinister symphony rising above their frantic hearts. It was an invitation and a warning all at once. "We have to go back," Lisa shouted as cold fingers of darkness reached toward them, as if the very floor was unraveling beneath their feet. "Run!" Mark yelled, grabbing her wrist and dragging her toward the door. They fled through the threshold, slamming it shut behind them, but not before one chilling laugh echoed through the air, an echo that felt like it held promises of nightmares yet to come. But the hallway they had come from now loomed dark and twisted, and the way back felt obscured, fraught with dread. What secrets had awakened in those shadows, and what horrors waited for them still? As they stood there, breathless and terrified, another voice broke through the oppressive atmosphere, a low, whispering invitation that made the hairs on their necks stand on end. "Stay, play with us." Mark Lisa's voice quivered, paralyzed with fear. Would they remain trapped in this nightmare, forever entwined in the grip of ancient terror? Lisa's heart thundered against her chest, the whisper dancing around them like a spectral breeze, coaxing them deeper into the malevolence of the corridor. The flickering light above them sputtered, drowning the space in deeper shadows, and her instinct screamed at her to flee, but dread kept her rooted to the spot. "Just ignore it," Mark said, his voice shaky but determined. "We can't let them get into our heads." Yet a pull and insidious compulsion urged her forward. She wanted to believe it was just her mind playing tricks, but every instinct told her otherwise. The air thickened, pressure building as if they were moving through syrup. Each heartbeat echoed in her ears, a drumroll announcing their demise. "Let's try this door," Mark said, gesturing towards another dimly lit doorway that seemed to shimmer like a mirage in the darkness. It felt wrong, so wrong, yet it beckoned to them. The whispering filled her mind, wrapping around thoughts until they blurred. "Please stay, play." Lisa swallowed hard. She felt trapped between the idea of safety behind heavy wood and the insanity lurking every step behind. "What if we get lost again?" she said, panic prickling at her spine. "We won't. We'll stick together this time," he assured her, grasping her wrist firmly. With a stealing breath, they approached the door and pushed it open. The hinges protested, and the space beyond looked like another chamber filled with dust and remnants of a life long gone, a playroom, almost like the one before, but darker, the toys here ominously still. As they stepped inside, the silhouettes of life-sized puppets loomed over them, frozen mid-motion, their painted eyes following them. Something in the urgency of their gaping mouths struck a chord of fear deep in Lisa's gut. A sense of dread bubbled to the surface. She didn't want to be near them. "Mark," she whispered nervously, backing away from a grotesque clown puppet. It appeared to smile, but the tightness of its features radiated a ghastly mockery. "What if they're watching us?" "I don't know, but we shouldn't stay," Mark replied, scanning the room. "We need to keep moving. We can't get trapped here." The two of them moved deeper into the room, the shadows bending around them, twisting into shapes that didn't mimic their own but embraced a collective malice that chilled them. Then came a soft giggle, one without joy that echoed against the corners of the room. "Do you hear that?" Lisa asked, glancing around wildly. The laughter sounded like it was coming from all directions, surrounding them. "Mark, it's coming from everywhere. Yeah, I hear it," he said, brows furrowing. "We've got a sudden crash erupted from behind them." They spun around just in time to see the clown puppet topple from its post, landing face first onto the floor with a hollow thud. The laughter ceased abruptly, an unnatural silence swallowing the room whole. Mark's grip tightened around her wrist. "Let us go." They dashed toward the door, but before they could reach it, shadows flared to life, coalescing into darkened figures around them, dark limbs stretching towards them like twisted vines. "Play with us forever." Fingers of shadow grasped at Lisa's ankles, pulling her down into a swirling void. She could feel panic seize her throat as her feet slipped against the floor, trying to run, yet the terror that surrounded them felt inescapable, a living force that would not let go. "No! Mark!" she screamed, wrenching away from the grasping darkness, dragging herself toward the fragile light of the doorway. But as they reached the threshold, that sultry whisper reached them once more, urgent and persuasive. "Stay, play forever. You don't want to leave." Something glittered at the edge of the hall, the glint of a shiny object catching Lisa's eye. She hesitated, the voice still tugging at her from the darkness. What if we do see what's down there?" "Lisa!" Mark shouted, pulling her back just in time, forcing her through the doorway. They stumbled into the hallway, gasping for breath, the taste of adrenaline sharp and bitter. Yet the hallway was different. Now. Shapes blurred, sounds warped. The laughter returned, boisterous and mocking, echoing from behind them. "Did we escape?" Lisa gasped, looking back, dread pooling in her chest, but as they backed away, a flickering light revealed figures at the edge of the shadows, beckoning them just as before. A chill stole her breath. The hallway stretched before them, dark and malevolent, but a new voice joined the chorus in her mind, a gravelly tone that sent ice coiling in her veins, chilling her resolve. "Endless games await you." Would they be able to escape the grip that sought to ensnare their souls, or would they lose themselves in the endless night of forgotten terror? Without warning, the shadows pulsed around them as if they had come alive, closing in like a suffocating blanket. Mark squeezed Lisa's hand, but his grip felt more like a lifeline as the dark whispered promises of despair. The laughter grew louder, swirling around them, a cacophony that gripped at her sanity. "Run!" Mark shouted. He tugged her down the corridor, where the walls seemed to close in, warping reality. Each step felt heavier, like they were wading through treacle. Lisa glanced over her shoulder. Faint silhouettes darted behind them, always just out of sight but impossible to ignore. "Where do we go?" she panted, her lungs burning with fear. "Just keep moving." Mark gasped, desperation sharpening his voice. They turned a corner, and the corridor twisted again, each turn a cruel mockery of an escape. With every bend, another flicker of movement caught her eye. Shadows danced along the walls, whispering, "You can stay, we want you." "Mark, I can't. I can't do this." Lisa's voice trembled, rising in panic. "Focus on me," he urged, his voice steadier than his expression. "Focus on getting out." They stumbled into a larger room, the dim light above flickering dangerously. The walls were lined with mirrors that distorted their reflections, twisting them into grotesque parodies. Lisa's heart raced as she caught sight of a figure in one, red eyes staring back at her with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. "Did you see that?" She trembled, pointing towards the mirror, but when Mark glanced, it was only their panicked faces staring back. "Just the shadows playing tricks," he reassured, though his eyes betrayed the doubt that gnawed at him. With each minute, the laughter morphed into sobs, pitiful, echoing cries of lost souls. Lisa felt a pang deep in her chest. Were these the children from the story, their fates twisted into something far worse than death? "We have to find a way out," Mark insisted, his voice low and strained. They spotted another door at the far end of the room, partially ajar, light spilling through the cracks like milk through a sieve. With a shared look of determination, they sprinted towards it. Just as they reached the door, it slammed shut before them, a thudding echo that reverberated through the silence. Mark rammed his shoulder against it, but it wouldn't budge. "Let us out!" he shouted, panic creeping in. A soft giggle floated around them, chilling her to the bone. The reflections in the mirrors began to ripple, the faces morphing into twisted smiles that sent a wave of nausea through her. "Play with us?" a voice taunted, childlike yet sinister. "Not again!" Lisa screamed, fear bubbling into despair. Suddenly, the mirrors burst with a shattering sound, fragments flying like shards of glass, each piece reflecting their terrified faces in a grotesque theater of horror. Mark shielded her, but she was captivated by the reflections forming into shadowy figures, each one reaching out as if longing for something they could never have. I can't take this!" Mark yelled as the laughter grew, intertwining with the cries of children, a sickening symphony that drowned out reason. In a moment of desperation, Lisa grabbed a piece of sharp glass, her hand trembling as she felt a sick rush of power. "We can fight back, Mark. We have to." But before she could react, shadows erupted around them, forming limbs and faces that clawed at their sanity. "Stay play forever," they hissed, their breath cold against her skin. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, engulfing them in total darkness. Time seemed suspended, everything silent but her heartbeat echoing in her ears. Panic whipped through her veins. "Lisa!" Mark's voice was suddenly distant as if he'd been drawn away into the dark. "Mark!" she screamed, the void swallowing her cry. Just as it seemed the shadows would consume her completely, a flood of light erupted from the doorway. The brightness sliced through the darkness, illuminating the figures just long enough for her to glimpse faces twisted in agony, trapped in their eternal games. She lunged toward the light, but it shifted away, leaving her in the darkness once more. "No, don't leave." And then silence returned, heavy and suffocating. Shattered pieces of mirrors floated around her, reflecting her face filled with terror and defiance, yet no answers emerged from the swirling confusion. Then came that chilling voice, clear and deliberate, "Your turn is next." What price would they pay for escaping? Was there truly a way out, or had they just slipped into a nightmare with no escape? The silence felt alive, pressing in on Lisa, each breath a desperate fight against despair. She twisted around, searching for any sign of Mark, but the shadows enveloped her completely. Tentative screams echoed in her mind, and the chilling laughter resumed, as if the darkness itself was mocking her. "Mark!" she shouted, her voice swallowed by the void. She stumbled forward, hands brushing against the walls that felt cold and slick, like they were alive, pulsing against her touch. Every inch she moved seemed to draw the shadows closer, a weight dragging at her very soul. The moment she thought she heard her name spoken softly, she froze. "Lisa!" Mark's voice a mere whisper, lost in the tremors of the shadows. "Where are you?" "Right here," she cried, her heart racing. Had he been pulled deeper into this nightmare? She took a step towards the sound, and the floor beneath her flickered, revealing the ghost of their reflections in the shards of broken mirrors scattered like fallen stars. Each piece distorted her form, merging it with grotesque shapes and eyes that watched her, boring into her very essence. Then the walls began to pulse, and she saw faces inside the darkness that seeped from them. Their whispers slithered around her ears, filled with pain and longing. "Help us, stay with us," they beckoned, a haunting chorus that chilled her marrow. "No!" she cried, shaking her head as if to drown them out. "I am not like you." The shadows recoiled for a moment, hesitation rippling through the air. In that fleeting moment of defiance, she turned back toward the flickering light, hoping to find a way through, hoping to find Mark. Every few seconds, the light flickered erratically, pulsing as if it was struggling to exist. Each throb felt like a heartbeat, and she wondered if it was a warning or a lifeline. As she neared the edge of the light, she felt something brush against her leg, a cold hand, fingers wrapping around her ankle. She gasped, jerking her leg away, but the grip tightened. Looking down, she saw ghostly limbs grasping from the shadows, faces reaching, wide-eyed and silent, begging for release. Their choked cries were lost in the chaos of the echoes. With adrenaline surging through her veins, Lisa kicked wildly, the glass shards raining down around her like a storm. "Let go of me!" she shouted, pulling away hard enough to break free. She stumbled back, her heart racing as she caught sight of a familiar figure just beyond the light mark. "Lisa! Over here!" he shouted, arms outstretched, panic lacing his voice. She sprinted toward him, the shadows shrieking in protest, limbs swiping at her heels, desperate to reclaim her. "Keep running!" Mark yelled, motioning her closer. As they nearly collided, shadows darted between them, wrapping around Mark's waist, pulling him back into the dark. "No! Mark!" Lisa lunged, but the shadows were too strong, his face blurring into a wide-eyed expression of horror. "Lisa, don't!" His scream mingled with the laughter, drowning in echoes that seemed to spiral into infinity. And just like that, he was gone, the light dwindling and shadows consuming the space where he stood. Lisa stumbled back, a scream caught in her throat. She felt the cold creeping in, wrapping around her like fog, and in that moment, she understood. She was alone in a place where nightmares thrived, her heart pounding painfully against the crushing weight of despair. "Mark!" she wailed, but the word was devoured by the cacophony around her, the sickening symphony of laughter and cries, the shadows weaving into an intricate tale of torment. They were here, close enough to feel their icy breath. "Your turn is next," they whispered, their voices intertwining with the echoes of sadness. But then, something unexpected happened. A new voice, deep and gravelly, broke through their twisted laughter, promising something different. "You can escape if you truly wish to." Something within her flickered at the thought. Would she dare to challenge the very darkness that had consumed them? What awaited her in that abyss? Would she face the shadows alone, or was there still a chance to rescue Mark, safeguard their souls from a fate worse than death? The darkness thickened around her, oppressive and suffocating, as uncertainty wove tighter around her heart. "What do I have to do?" she whispered, fear trembling in her gut, the next step heavier than ever. And then she heard it, a whispered promise that hung in the air like a dark mist: "You will find out soon enough." The darkness stretched, a living entity pulsating with a dreadful hunger. Lisa's heart raced, a war drum echoing through a shattered landscape of fear. "You will find out soon enough." The chilling whisper lingered in the air, bitter and sweet, a trap laid exquisitely for a heart pounding with hope. "Mark!" she screamed, desperation clawing at her throat. And then she remembered, the file. Thrusting her hand into her pocket, she fished out Daniel Mark's file, their only connection to the truth that could unravel this nightmare. "Find the light." A voice echoed in her mind, Mark's, pushing her forward. She took a daring breath, the air thick with despair, and turned back toward the oppressive shadows. "If you want to take me, then let us dance." She had an idea, a madness born from fear. Lisa sprinted towards the flickering light, the file clutched tightly in her hands, each step fueled by fierce determination. "I know the truth," she shouted into the abyss, challenging the darkness. "You can't hold me. You can't keep him." The figures lurched, anticipation glimmering in their hollow eyes. Shadows slithered closer, each moment pregnant with dread. But she stopped short, revealing the contents of the file, holding it high like a beacon. The yellowed paper felt alive in her grasp, trembling with untold stories. "Daniel Mark's patient of Maplewood Hospital. They tried to silence you, just like they tried to silence all of you." Lisa shouted, her voice gaining strength like a wave crashing against a cliff. The laughter faltered, the figures momentarily halted. She felt it, a flicker of resistance, the darkness shimmered, uncertainty pricking at its malevolent core. This isn't a game. She continued, her resolve hardening. This is your truth. You're not forgotten. And with that, the shadows recoiled, a rippling gasp echoing through the corridor. The laughter morphed, twisting into anguished cries, half enthralled by her words and half enraged. She took a step closer to the source of the darkness, pressing her advantage while she still had it. Your stories deserve to be heard. Just like Danny's. I will share them with the world. You will not fade into despair. She cried, the weight of that promise igniting a fire within her. Suddenly, a blast of cold air surged, sending icy tendrils wrapping around her like chains. The figures wailed, their bodies swirling, caught between torment and the hope she clutched fiercely. In the blink of an eye, Lisa felt something shift. The shadows began to retract, peeling away slowly like soggy wallpaper, revealing a brighter reality behind them. Mark's face materialized through the light, fear still raging in his eyes but hope sparking inside. Lisa. I'm here. Mark. The sound burst from her lips, and like a surge of wind, the darkness broke, revealing the two of them standing at the edge of a void. She rushed forward, flinging herself into his arms, panting against his shoulder as joy threaded through her terror. I thought I lost you. She gasped, feeling the weight of what they had survived crush against her chest. The shadows loomed, angry now, but their power waned, retreating into the corners as if they sensed defeat, but she'd promised their stories would be shared. Fight back. She whispered, pushing through the fog of confusion to pull Mark beyond the threshold. Together, we'll uncover the truth. With one last defiant glance at the shadows, Lisa turned away from the darkness, locking the memories of pain and madness deep within her heart, channeling them into strength. They sprinted toward the light, a scattering illumination breaking through walls of despair, and with every stride, the whispers faded, the cold fingers released their grip, offering respite as the door creaked open, flooding them with warmth. They burst through and collapsed outside, darkness swallowed by the day's light, gasping against the exhilaration. Lisa felt freedom within reach. They made it, they were alive, but as she looked around, the euphoria quickly shifted to grim reality. The Maplewood Hospital loomed behind them, a grim statue. Against the sunrise, shadows lingering in its corners, still waiting, still hungry. And this story is just beginning, Mark said, reading the determination in her eyes. They had each other, the promise of a new start, and thousands of stories yet to tell. But this time, they would face the darkness together, bearing witness to everything hidden behind the shadow. The echoes of the past swirled within them, but they would not let it define their future. There was power in truth, and they would shine a light fiercely against the gathering night. The shadows may linger, but they would never lose hope. You need to subscribe now to receive what comes next. This story is just the beginning of their journey. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the stories coming. And listen, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what's next. Let's get the conversation going. Don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see the thrilling conclusion and prepare for what lies ahead. Your support matters, and it helps keep the adventure alive.